Hi guys! In this video we're going to cover the next chapter, which is break-even analysis. Before in the old syllabus it was in the third unit under finance, but in the new syllabus it's in production, so that's why we kind of jumped back and forth to cover costs and revenues, and now we can cover break-even analysis. It's a long chapter. In this video, we're just going to cover the first two methods of calculating a break-even analysis or conducting break-even analysis. And in the later videos or lesson, we're going to cover the rest. How much do I need to sell and for what price in order to earn a profit? This would be the main question that break-even analysis will be answering. It will be answering how much do I need to sell and for what price in order to earn a profit, in order not to be experiencing a loss as a company. How do we calculate a profit? That's what we need to start with. What is the equation for profit? So as you saw in the last video, it is calculated as total revenue minus total costs. And this equation can be broken down into different, more, let's say, detailed variables. Total revenue can be broken down into price times quantity sold, because that's how you calculate it. Total costs can then be broken down into fixed costs plus variable costs. So if I put it back together, profit can be also calculated as price times quantity sold minus brackets fixed costs plus variable costs. There is a reason why I'm putting it in brackets. You'll see later. So the idea is, again, we're going back to the original question that the break-even analysis is asking: how much do I need to sell and for what price? Yeah, we're seeing that we're looking at the quantity and at the same time we're looking at the price. In order for the profit to be at what level? Break-even is defined as the level of output at which total costs equal total revenue. So at the break-even level of output, the profit is actually zero because total revenue equals total costs. Therefore, if you deduct the total costs from the total revenue, we're going to get a zero. Basically, our profit is zero. Here you can see it graphically. Yeah. So therefore, we can say that at break-even level of output, our total revenue equals total costs, right? And since before in the previous slide, you saw how we broke down the whole equation of profit, we can also break it down at this point. So total revenue will break down into quantity times price. Total cost will break down into fixed costs plus variable costs. We can also rearrange the equations any way we want. The point is that at this level of output, at the break-even level of output, we are not experiencing any profit and we're not experiencing any loss. There's no profit or loss made. So now how do we calculate break-even? Or how do we get there? How do we actually find the break-even level of output? There are three methods. The easiest one, but also more time-consuming, is creating a table of costs and revenues and then comparing the values that we get. Second method is graphical. So we're actually going to plot the values on a graph. And the third one, and the most precise, but already using some kind of formula, is the formula method. So when I was saying one of them is easier, I guess it's the way how you look at things and maybe what are your strengths. The first method, table of costs and revenues. Here is an example. The example we're looking at is a hamburger stall and a Premier League football match, where the sole trader, the business owner, is actually renting the stall for $500 per day. It costs him to produce one hamburger for $1, and he's selling that one hamburger for $2. So the price of the one hamburger is $2, and the cost of production of one hamburger is $1. Just to repeat maybe some of the units that we've learned recently, rent would be what type of cost? It would be a fixed cost. And the cost of production of one hamburger would be variable cost. So we can actually create a table and plot the different values in there. So let's say that the quantity sold can range from 0 up to 700. And our business owner wants to find out how many he needs to sell in order to break even. So what we do is, let's say, first, the easiest one, we plot the fixed costs. Then we plot the variable costs. That would be quantity times cost of production. Then we plot the total cost. So from the previous lesson, we already know that total costs would be fixed costs plus variable costs. And then last, or not last actually, for revenue, to calculate revenue, we need to multiply the price, which is $2, times the quantity. So in this case, it's going to be, table is going to look like this. And now the last is calculating profit or loss. So we already know that profit is calculated as total revenue minus total costs. Okay, don't be mistaken by the fact that revenue is to the right side of total costs. We need to deduct total costs from revenue. So at the quantity of 100, it's going to be minus $400. Now, in business, I'm not sure if we already talked about it, but in business, we like to put negative numbers in brackets. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. We just do. So here, the negative numbers are actually showing us that at this point, we're experiencing loss. We're experiencing loss up until here, this one, where we are breaking even. So if we look, the break-even level of output is 500. So the answer is the business owner of the hamburger stall needs to sell 500 hamburgers in order to break even. Anything that he sells after that is actually going to be earning him profit. The second method, how we can calculate break-even, is the graphical method. So you plot all the lines on the graph and you somehow read off the graph. In order to calculate or basically read the break-even level of output from the graph, you need essentially just 3 lines: the total fixed cost line, total cost line, and total revenues line. You don't necessarily need to draw the total variable cost line. It might be useful to draw it there just in order to copy the direction and the slope of the total cost line. And where does break even happen? So it happens, break-even happens where total revenue equals total costs. Yeah. So we can mark it with a little circle to indicate the point, and also we should draw dotted lines from the circle going down to each to the left to each of the axes, and marking the level of output and the level of, let's say, revenue and costs at which break-even is happening. Notice that before, when we were talking about costs and revenues separately, the y-axis was marked as costs, or separately it was marked as revenue. Right now we need to actually label the graph as costs and sales revenue. The unit is going to be the same, so it's going to be the currency, but you need to make sure that you get the labels right as well. So when is the business experiencing loss? When the total costs are higher than the total revenue. So when this line is actually above the green line, so all the way here, we're experiencing loss. And when are we experiencing profit? When the green line, the total revenues line, is actually above the red line. Yeah, so all the way here, we're experiencing profit. So you can mark it. You can color this in with red and this one with green, or you can mark it the same way as I have done in this graph. I strongly advise you starting already drawing with rulers, with pencils, plotting as many graphs as you can, because actually break-even charts, drawing a break-even charts is very easy and good way how to earn points on an exam. Right. You can even read off the level of the loss and the level of the profit from the graph. So you just have a look what would be the value, and at the certain level of output, then you can read it off. There are many things that can be done with this graph. Now, I'm going to show a few case studies. So in this case, to practice reading of the graph. So what is going on here? What is the situation here? What changed? Okay, so we have output, we have costs and revenues. We know that it's a break-even chart, so we somehow need to read it. I'm going to give you some time. So the question is, what changed? Okay, so the fixed costs are the same. The total costs are the same. So what changed is the SR line. Don't be confused by the label. It's sales revenue in this case. You can also label it as R or TR, but it means the same thing. So what changed? At the beginning we had SR here, and suddenly it moved up. So what do you think could be the reason for the revenue increase suddenly? Could it be higher demand for the product? Could it be perhaps even higher price for the product? Maybe both. Essentially, it's how the question is, how did that affect the break-even point? So originally, the original break-even point was here, and when the particular change increased the sales revenue line, the break-even point moved downwards. So now actually, is that a better version? Is that better for the business, or is it worse? The fact that the break-even level of output decreased. The answer is it's better for the business, because suddenly they don't need to sell as many products in order to start earning profit. Yeah, they need to sell less in order to break even. So this is what it means for the business. It's a good change. Now we're going to show a different example. And again, what changed and how did that affect the break-even point? Let's give you some time. Okay, so what happened? The first thing that changed is you can see that the fixed cost line increased by some amount, and also, therefore, actually not therefore, but the total cost line also actually increased. Sorry, the total cost line was here, and suddenly it's here. How come the total cost line decreased even though the fixed costs have increased? So probably they're experiencing some big change that is affecting both their fixed cost and their variable costs. For example, maybe they move to a different country where the fixed costs are higher, but somehow the variable costs are lower. Maybe they are paying higher rent, but maybe they're paying less for the materials and for the wages and for all the variable costs. It doesn't have to be as drastic as moving to a different country. It can be just moving to a different factory or different renting out a different space where there's this difference. So the total cost line is downward sloping compared to the total cost line number one. Sales revenue stayed the same. And now, what does this mean for the business? How did that affect the break-even point? The original break-even point was here, BE1, and now BE2 moved down. So even though their fixed costs are higher, essentially they're better off because they need to sell less output in order to earn profit. And here you can see basically the uses of break-even analysis. You can use it in order to let's see which decisions are more practical, more beneficial, more profitable for the business, and which ones are not as profitable. So in this case, this is why it's actually happening after this is why we're discussing it after the location chapter, because essentially the break-even analysis might help you compare different locations and then seeing what would be the more profitable results. And this is where I'm going to finish or end the video, and we're going to cover the rest of the chapter later on.